In terms of the strengths of the marketing of Georgian wine at the moment, I think that one has to say that it's Georgian wine which probably most people outside Georgia had not heard of at all, even 5 years ago. Now it is on the map. It's on wine lists in restaurants, it's on the shelves of some good wine shops, and if you actually count the number of centimeters in magazines and newspapers and so on, it's made a huge footprint, if you like, in the market, which without huge spending and without very big companies and so on, I think is very impressive and something that the Georgians should be very pleased with. I think on the other side, if you're talking about what weaknesses there might be, there is confusion. There is confusion between Georgian wine and orange wine and Krevri wine and natural wine. And I think there is a danger for Georgia that people think, oh, Georgian wine, it's all natural wine. I don't like natural wine, so I don't like Georgian wine. So I think there's some definite confusion there. And secondly, I think, and this depends from different countries, Georgia has to understand that in some countries, being associated with the old Soviet Union is potentially a handicap. In the UK, for example, there's a history of buying cheap Bulgarian wines, so there's an expectation that wines from countries in that part of the map will be cheap, and Georgia doesn't make cheap wine. So that's something that we have to address, but that isn't necessarily true in other countries. Other countries may not have that history of buying cheap Soviet area wines in the past. I think the point of Georgia being the most ancient wine country, 8,000 years, it is potentially very valuable, but it doesn't work as effectively in all markets. In America, ancient doesn't always make something more desirable. And Tommy Hilfiger, as a fashion brand that's 30 years old, is a more valuable fashion brand than some very established Italian or French brands. The same thing applies to 8,000 years of Georgian wine. Americans don't necessarily see that as much of a plus. In China, which is an ancient country, they really value it. So we really have to look at each market and what each market wants to take from the picture. If we take the old Soviet Union out of the picture, or the old neighboring markets for Georgian wine, I think that there are two ways of looking at it. One is geographic. Should we say, oh, Scandinavia is going to be good for us, for example, or China will be good for us because of, in China's case, because of the fact that it's a new market, a lot of people who have no real history or baggage of wine, so they're ready to try new things, maybe in a different way, and they value the ancient qualities of Georgian wine. And then we could say, well, if Georgia has a footprint in the natural wine world, that is playing very well in Scandinavia and Germany, for example. But I would also look at it in a non-geographic way. And I think it's quite important to, in a social media age, I think it's going to be people in each market. So we talk about the US. Georgia is doing very well in Manhattan, in downtown New York. I haven't seen the figures. I doubt that Georgia is doing as well in Phoenix or in Denver. So I think we're looking at, now why am I saying New York? It's not geographically New York, it's the fact that New York has got the most sophisticated wine drinkers in the United States and the people who are most open to new things in all sorts of ways. So I think we need to identify in each country who are the people who are most likely to enjoy Georgian wine. The important thing we must remember about Georgia is that this is not a big winemaking country. We're not looking for hundreds of millions of Georgian wine drinkers. We're not Australia or Chile. We need to find the niche that works for Georgia.